Sonny Melendrez, Sonny Radio, sonnyradio.com.
Hello, it's Sonny Melendrez, and welcome to the positive side of the radio spectrum. This is the Sonny Melendrez Show, and every week we strive to bring you entertainment and inspiration through storytelling, fascinating guests, exclusive celebrity interviews, and it's all delivered with lots of enthusiasm. Wait till you hear who I've got on the show today. He is unrecognizably famous. But first, let me mention that our sponsor, Ideal Precision Roofing, recently was awarded a big roofing contract. That's right, Texas Military Institute right here in San Antonio has chosen Ideal Precision Roofing for their roofing needs. I'll be telling you more about that in future shows. But I also will tell you that recently there were some winds, very high 60-mile-an-hour winds in some cases in the San Antonio area. If you were in that high wind area, chances are you may have had some wind damage done to your roof and not even know it. So I urge you to call Ideal Precision Roofing, the premier roofing company here in San Antonio, for a free inspection. They'll come out, their experts will literally find out exactly what's going on with your roof, and if indeed you have wind damage or maybe even hail damage from previous storms, they'll let you know, and rest assured you're in good hands. Call the experts at Ideal Precision Roofing at 210-485-1553. That's 210-485-1553, or visit them on the web at idealprecisionroofing.com. And now, on with the show.
Sonny Radio, sonnyradio.com, San Antonio.
Our next guest is a very funny man, and he'll be performing with Johnny Mathis. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Gary Mule Deer. Gary, come on up.
But my guest today is an overnight success after 58 years. As a matter of fact, you may have seen him, you may have heard him, or maybe not even heard about him. And yet, he is one of the most sought-after and busiest entertainers in the world of comedy. And in a way, this is a reunion of sorts. It is such a pleasure to welcome Gary Mule Deer to the show. Gary, welcome. How long has it been?
It's been a while.
It has been. Back in the 70s. Now, I want to refresh your memory. You probably don't remember this, but you were on my show on KMPC in Los Angeles. It was right there on Sunset Boulevard, and you're probably on the show like 2 or 3 times. You with the Elaine Boozler. I've had even had Steve Martin and all different people from that era. But I remember we did a show where you and I walked down Hollywood Boulevard, and we recorded the entire walk. And you just you remember that?
I do remember that, but I'd forgotten. Now I remember. Now you're refreshed my memory. Yes, I do remember.
Yeah,
wow.
We were walking down, and all you did was comment and give us those great Gary Mule Deer isms and all kinds of different things that we'd see the people. Of course, this is radio, so you're describing everything. And I remember this one. We walked by this little coffee shop, and they had ham and eggs for 99 cents. And I said, "How can they do that?" And you said, "They use pigeon eggs."
I don't remember. That's great. I don't remember that. I'm not that quick anymore.
No.
That's great.
I think you are.
Terrific.
Well, Gary, I was talking about the fact that you had an incredible career and you're going strong, and you're just an unbelievably respected artist. So let's go back to that time, that era of the 1970s. Okay. And you actually were a roommate with Steve Martin, weren't you?
Well, I was back in the late 60s, about 68 and 69, with Michael Johnson, also the great singer, Michael, who we lost a couple of years ago.
Yes,
we did. We had a place in Palms, California, as a matter of fact. Right.
And explain to everybody, what that era was like, because that was a time when Jay Leno, when so many people that we now know as icons in the world of comedy were getting started and also struggling very much.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember in the late 60s, there were no comedy clubs yet around, And a lot of us were working in music clubs, from the Troubadour to Ledbetter's to the Ice House, places like that.
Yes.
Which is pretty much, I met Steve Martin at Ledbetter's, which was Randy Sparks had a club. He's the guy that started the New Christy Minstrel.
Yes, exactly.
He built a showcase club, and it was wonderful. Had the back porch majority there. I remember the first edition played there. The Carpenters, when they were like 12 years old, all these different people. And it wasn't until about 1971 or 2 that I remember when the Comedy Store came about. I had a partner during that time. It was the Mule Deer and Moondog Medicine Show. It was me, myself, and Dennis Flanagan. And that's in the days when if you were in the right place at the right time. We had just barely gotten together. I was in a group that was traveling called Bandana on Paramount Records. We were playing out in Denver, Colorado, at a place called Fridays and Saturdays. Fridays was where the folk rock groups played. Saturdays was where the rock groups played. At the same time, ironically, my group broke up the same night that the rock and roll band broke up next door. And the guy that was the lead singer, Dennis Flanagan, we decided to form a duo. We did a thing 2 nights later at Marvelous Marv's, which was a club down in Denver. We did a benefit for a musician. We didn't know what we were going to do. We were standing out by the bar, and there was a bowling trophy in the back, and my partner Dennis asked for it. He taped 3 candles to it, took it down on stage like it was a Liberace candelabra, and started playing Moonlight Sonata. I walked down and started telling with my guitar and told a couple of Indian stories while he was playing in the background. Now, the people went crazy over this. After that, we walked off. A guy came up to us and said, "I'm the manager of the We Five. We're working in Aspen next week. Would you guys like to open?" We said yes. So we went back to L.A. to get my stuff. And as we're driving down Sunset Boulevard, Sonny, this is about 71, I think.
Yeah.
We see the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
And we go up, there's about 8 cars in the parking lot, and we go inside, and at the door is Rudy DeLuca, who later did a lot of stuff with Mel Brooks, Craig T. Nelson, who became the great actor, Barry Levinson, who was the great director, and Mitzi Shore's husband at the time, Sammy Shore.
Right.
And they were an improv group, and there were about 8 people in the audience, and they said, "Are you guys comedians?" We said, "You have a piano?" And they said, "Sure." Took the bowling trophy, went up, Dennis lit the bowling trophy, played Moonlight Sonata. I did a couple of Indian stories. We walked off. We were out in the parking lot. 2 of the 8 people in the audience were John Biner and his manager, who said to us, "We're doing a summer show at CBS this year. Would you like to be on it?" We said, "Well, we have to go back and play for the We Five in Aspen, then we'll be back." That's how things happened in those days.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What a great story.
You're listening to the Sonny Melendrez Show. Sonny's email address is sonny@sonnyradio.com.
We're brought to you by Ideal Precision Roofing in San Antonio. Now, I mentioned that we had some high winds not too long ago, and there are many homes and even businesses that may have wind damage and not even know it. You know, high winds can tear and remove the shingles, leaving the roof deck, the underlayment, or even old shingles from a previous roof exposed to the elements. In fact, wind can also lift and curl shingles by breaking the seal that bonds them together, and that leaves your roof vulnerable to wind-driven rain. So if you suspect that you might have wind damage from those recent high winds in our area, please do yourself a favor and call Ideal Precision Roofing at 210-485-1553. That's 210-485-1553, or visit them at idealprecisionroofing.com for a free inspection. And don't forget to tell them that Sonny Melendrez sent you. I'm back with the unrecognizably famous Gary Mule Deer. So, at what point, Gary, did you, I know that back then the big thing was to be on The Tonight Show. Do you remember where you were when you got the call, or how it was that you...
I was at the Comedy Store and did a set in the main room, and David Brenner was sitting with Mitzi Shore, and somebody said, "Mitzi wants to see you." I walked over to the table, and David Brenner stood up and introduced himself and said, "I'm hosting the Tonight Show coming up. Would you like to be on it? I'd like to have you be the comedian." And that's how I got on the show. Ironically enough, Sonny, because I never was a stand-up comedian. I was a musician with props, and I did comedy. And the Tonight Show didn't really care for that. I always did very well, but strangely enough, the only time they ever call me is if somebody canceled. If somebody canceled Mule Deer, get Mule Deer.
Right.
He'll be here in 2 hours. He doesn't ask to sit on the panel, and he fills up the time great.
God
and that's how I
bless
did
you.
all my Tonight shows. Ironically enough, a lot of the guys, they did well in the Tonight Show. Johnny called them over to sit down, right, on the couch.
Yes.
Well, I never got that opportunity. But a lot of those people really didn't ever get to know Johnny. I mean, although Seinfeld and Leno, whoever they were, all the guys went over and sat down on the couch and after being called over, I got to know Johnny because I was working the lounges in the Sahara Lounge in Las Vegas, and Johnny would do the weekend. He would come in with Jack Eglash and the orchestra, Johnny Carson.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to know him after our shows more or less and hung out with him, whereas I would never got to do that if I'd have been on the Tonight Show with him.
Isn't that something?
I could never get on the Tonight Show with Johnny because they just didn't like my props and my guitar. They always told me, if you want to just drop all that stuff, we'll put you on a couple times a year. That wasn't me. So it's really crazy when I look back in those days. But I'll tell you, Sonny, how powerful that show was. I did my show with David Brenner that night.
When my next guest, Gary Mule Deer, walks through that curtain, it's not only going to be his first appearance on The Tonight Show, which all the comedians remember very well, it's also going to be the first time that a person from Spearfish, South Dakota, ever came through that... You're kidding! That is 7 times the population of Spearfish, South Dakota. But he will be the first, and it's no wonder that he comes from a town like that because I've seen him often. He was a regular on the Dinah Shore Summer Show, and he's very strange. Please welcome from Spearfish, Gary Mule Deer.
And the next day I get a call to go meet Woody Allen. And I go down to a big studio, and I'm walking down the size of a hangar. It's empty. Down at the far end is Woody Allen sitting with an assistant on a couch. I've got an afro at that time. It was like as big as 3 basketballs.
I remember.
I hadn't cut my hair for like 5 years. And I walk all the way down there to Woody Allen. He stands up, introduces me to his assistant, shakes my hand and says, "Are you busy Monday?" I said, "No." He said, "You'll be hearing from me." That's all it was. I walked all the way back out of the studio, and in about 4 hours, I got a script for Annie Hall. And
wow.
I call my manager and tell my manager, I got a script, I'm doing the show. He says, "By the way, I just had a call. Tomorrow you're going over to an office called Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Yeah.
And they want to talk to you." So I go over there, and they asked me to be the comedy host and the off-camera announcer for the show that followed Saturday Night Live for 4 years. That's how things happened in those days.
Yeah.
This was with a guest host.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you talking about going to hang out with Johnny Carson. The guys who went to couch, as they called it, to go to panel, to go sit there next to him, they didn't know Johnny like you did.
Whole other world.
Yeah. And the other part of it is, don't you feel like comedy back in those days, there was a hunger to be on that stage? And you hear these stories about Jay Leno sleeping in the alley next to the Improv, or in his car. But you guys, and see, I was lucky because I also did stand up. I did it as almost as a side thing because I had a radio show. And you guys, I mean, that was it. It was sink or swim. And how did you survive back then?
Well, I'll tell you, I had to jump on everybody, honey, because I had started doing clubs back in the Dakotas in the 1960s, and then went to Denver and worked. So by the time I got out to California, and by the time the comedy clubs had come in, I had been doing bars and opening for bands and doing stuff for probably, for 8 or 10 years. And then when Dennis and I from 70 to 75, we were partners. We were a comedy duo that opened for all the rock and roll bands. Aside from Cheech and Chong and maybe Tom Greason's and Tim Reed's act, they didn't really work with rock bands. We were the rock and roll comedian guys, out touring with the Doobie Brothers, the Guess Who, Sly and the Family Stone, Rare Earth, Earth, Wind and Fire, all these groups. And that's how we got our comedy chops, actually. When Dennis and I broke up in 75, that's when people started coming in, like Letterman, Leno, all those different people. By then, I had been going out on the road and opening for people like Merle Haggard, and I'd been opening for people like Gordon Lightfoot. I was out with, all these different acts working all the time. Roger Miller. I was on the road with Roger Miller during that time. So the Comedy Store was kind of an aside thing for me also. These guys were fighting to get into the main room to work for nothing.
Yeah.
And I'd be coming back from Tahoe after making $3,500 for a few nights, opening for Gordon Lightfoot or, whoever. I mean, so it was a rare thing for me. I stood out from that because I always was a funny musician. I was never a stand-up, And at my show today now, when I do my own 90-minute show, it's half music and half comedy and stories like I'm talking to you about right now.
Right. Yeah. It's just a wonderful way to evolve, and how great that you were working steadily. And again, you were also prepared when it came time for...
I was prepared. Yeah, I was. And the comedy clubs, it was tough for me all those years. I always had a production manager. I always had a guy doing tape cues. I had a lot of tape cues in my act. I had a lot of lighting things, a lot of sound things. We didn't really have the great sound in a lot of the comedy clubs to begin with. We did the best we could because I was doing a lot of music at that time also. Made it work, but it was not that comfortable. I would have to go off and play the big rooms or go off on tour. Mm-hmm. That's when I got the big sound systems and I got the stuff I was really comfortable with. But it was really pretty amazing to me to, Steve Martin and I started out as prop comics.
Right.
I met Steve, I think, probably 68 at Ledbetter's. And he had a magic act and played a banjo.
I was a beginner, and Gary had an act. And it was a funny act, and it was an odd act and peculiar act. And as I look back on it, he and I were the only two comedians that I knew of that were using props.
I had a guitar, and I had a whole bunch of different props. And that's how we got together. Steve and I even tried an act for a while. It was very unusual, I have to tell you.
Really?
It was a kind of act where didn't last very long. It was only a few weeks. We just experimented. We were doing our own thing, but we did the Ice House, we did the Troubadour, we did Ledbetter's, and it was real funny because we would do our comedy and people would just kind of stare at us. Then we would do music because he's a great musician. We do Foggy Mountain Breakdown or something like that, or I'd do a Johnny Cash song, and they'd go crazy. So, I mean, that's also another way I did things. But I was there, Sonny, at the comedy stores, like when everybody started to first come in. Like I saw David Letterman his first night there. I saw Jay Leno in his first night. I saw Robin Williams his first night when they came in. I'd already been there for a while, so it was interesting for me to see, and I could always tell who was pretty much going to make it. For some reason, I would see somebody for the first time. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's ever done this, but when I saw David Letterman for the first time, I knew. When I saw Leno for the first night, I knew. When I saw Ellen DeGeneres for the first night, I knew. There was something about these people. Yakov Smirnoff, even. When I saw him for his very first show, I said, he's going to do something. There's just something about them, even though it was raw. And at the beginning, I remember when David Letterman did his first night at the Comedy Store, I'll never forget, I was standing in the back with all the other comics. When a new person came on, the seasoned comics who'd been around, maybe a year or two, would always stand in the back and kind of size up the new guy, right? Or the new girl.
Right.
And I was back there in the back, and I never forget David Letterman coming up and he was doing like an editorial, he was on TV doing an editorial. He said something about WXJY would like to take this time to announce that they are diametrically opposed to the practice of using orphans as yardage markers at driving ranges. And when I heard that, he had me. I just left and went right up and sat down in the front row and watched the rest of the show, introduced myself afterwards, was shocked that he knew who I was because he knew me from the Mule Deer and Moondog days. And, that's how I got some of my friendships that I knew some of the people right on. That's how it happened. I've been there a while.
That's also some of the magic of your approach. For instance, the joke about what your father always said. Yeah, your grandfather.
I always said, my grandpa used to say, listen, if we all like the same things, everybody'd be after your grandma. And I would say, Grandpa, was really said some weird things. One time, I said, Grandpa, what's the quickest way to get to the lake? He said, you walking or driving? I said, I'm driving. He said, that's the quickest. Yeah. And I said, I shouldn't make fun of Grandpa. Actually, it was pretty successful. He was a veterinarian and a taxidermist. I remember the sign said, no matter what happens, you'll get your dog back. Stuff like that. And I said, my grandmother was really something. One time I said, Grandma, have you seen a little pill bottle lying around here? And on the label in big letters, it says LSD. And she says, well, no, I haven't. And then she said, did you see that dragon in the kitchen?
Now, tell me, where these are obviously from outer space, but where are you when you have these thoughts? Are you driving? Are you in the shower?
It was at the time. Sometimes I come up with things right on stage. I remember a couple of lines of mine that I used forever in my show, and I still do. I remember on the Tonight Show one time doing a Tonight Show, and everything was going just great. I got something that got pretty good response, but not great response. And I just stopped and said, I have a feeling there are a lot of you sitting out there tonight wondering who canceled. I mean, stuff like that came up on the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
Something that on a national show, Dennis Flanagan and I, Mule Deer and Moondog, we never rehearsed. We just brought ourselves to the stage, and we just started doing stuff. It was
good
improvisational with music.
Yeah.
And we did that for 5 years. And a lot of it came out that way. I've never been a disciplined writer. I guess I was for a while, back in the days of typewriters. I know Steve Martin and I had typewriters, and we wrote all the time. But now it's just, I don't know what it is. I'm so blessed to still be doing this. I'll tell you what's going on with me, Sonny. I've been around so long. I was always the oldest of the new young comics. That's something that I always said, because by the time these guys came out and started doing things, I've been working for 12 to 15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, by 75, I started in 1960. And so there's a couple of guys there's a production company in Memphis called Via Productions.
Yes.
And they've been following me for about 3 years, because they think that there's nobody out here really doing what I'm doing at this age and has been doing it this long. Just between you and me and all of the radio fans and iHeartRadio and 32 countries, I'll let you know that I only have about 9 days left in my late 70s. The big one's coming up. And so me being out here at the big 8, doing what I'm doing, like I'm talking to you from Nashville. I'm doing 4 Grand Ole Opry starting tomorrow night. And from there, I'm going to meet Johnny Mathis and do Branson. I was just with Johnny Mathis in Cleveland. And before that, I was doing a show on my own at a Midwestern Cowboy Hall of Fame. So, I mean, I do a little bit of everything, and I'm still doing it. It's pretty amazing to me.
Isn't that something?
These documentary people have talked to everybody from Steve Martin and David Letterman to Jay Leno to Conan O'Brien, Vince Gill, Alice Cooper. I'm trying to, just off the top of my head, everybody from Steve Cropper to Paul Schaefer to Kevin Nealon, even Carrot Top. I mean, they've been talking to all the people that not only I influenced, that remember me, but, it's kind of overwhelming to me, this whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going. They're still interviewing people.
And I've
done hours with them,
And yet, Gary, through all of this, 58 plus years, not only on the road, you do 100, I read you do 100 gigs a year. If you were at half your age right now, doing what you're doing, people would say he's at the pinnacle of his success. And here you are doing it. But the other part of it is you are still enjoying it as if you were doing it for the first time, it sounds like.
Exactly. I feel so blessed, and I'm having so much fun. Johnny Mathis and I talk about this now and a couple other people that I know that have been around a long time. And we say, I think one of the reasons we enjoy this so much is we are better at what we do now than we've ever been. I feel that for what I'm doing now, I'm the best at what I've ever been. Whether it's playing guitar, whether it's singing, whether it's doing comedy, whatever it's doing, I'm enjoying it as much as I ever have. Yeah. Because I know, yes, through the experience. I've been around it a while.
Sure. And you've gotten better as time has gone on. And isn't it something how you can take a joke that you did in the 60s and do it today, and it's just as fresh, it's just as funny, and it kills on stage? It
is. That's what's amazing to me. I always had this knack of being able to write stuff that stuff that just it seemed pretty timeless. And I might tweak it here and there, but I have things I've been doing since the late '60s, and it works. It works as good as it ever has.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. I'm just, in a way, it's a blessing. In another way, people say, well, how often you don't have to come up with stuff a lot of times. I say, you know what? If I want to come up with something new, I add a song and I tell a story about where I was when I first heard this song or whatever. I mean, and if I got a joke in there, fine. If I don't, that's fine. A little bit of everything. I'm going to go out and I'm going straight from Johnny Mathis to go out and do Alice Cooper's Christmas Pudding. I'll be doing 2 Johnny Cash songs with people like Edgar Winter and Slash and the Alice Cooper Band. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing for me to just drop in, and I pretty much fit in with everybody.
Wow.
And I'm so blessed.
It's got to be a big thrill for you, too, not only as an artist, but also as a fan of all these great icons.
It is. You know what? Real quickly on this, all those years, Sonny, like when you and I were together and did stuff, I only went to bed Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Sonny. From 1968 until about 1986, I was Peruvian marching powder. Okay, literally. I mean, I was the guy that drove the bus for 24 hours and then did the show. I did all this stuff. I never went to bed, and I never wanted to go to bed.
Right.
And when I came out of rehab, Sonny, in 87 and took up golf, it changed my life. That's why I'm with Johnny Mathis today. That's why I did Royal Caribbean for 168 cruises. That's why I started doing the Nashville Network for 11 years. All these things, when I finally got clean and sober, no one really knew that I had to the extent of my cocaine thing at the time. So I'm so lucky to be here. I mean, but golf changed my life. I traded one 4-letter word. I traded Coke for golf. And then I started meeting all of my heroes. I remember Sonny playing in the Kraft Nabisco Dinah Shore, and I remember the guy, Terry Wilcox, that ran that big LPGA event, called me and said, your practice round is Tuesday at 10:30. You're going out with Joe DiMaggio, John Havlicek, and Johnny Unitas. Is that all right? This is how it became, and I became friends with Joe DiMaggio. I mean, I've been a Yankee fan for 71 years. I've been a Yankee fan. I mean, stuff like that happened. I got to play golf with Yogi Berra and Whitey Ford, and play with great icons. Everybody from Jerry Orbach, from Law and Order to all these people that I got to be friends with. I mean, all came out of golf. So that was another thing that opened doors for me too.
I guess so. I have to share with you. Same thing happened to me. I'd always gotten these invitations to play in the Bob Hope tournament when I was in L.A., and I didn't play golf. Yeah. So I'd say, no, I'm sorry, I don't play. Then I come to San Antonio, and David Robinson from the Spurs is doing a big charity tournament, and he calls me, says, Sonny, I want you to play my tournament. I said, David, I don't play. He says, yeah, and everybody gets a free pair of shoes. I said, what time's it start?
That's right, and that's why people like you and I, if you go to my garage, I probably have 10 pairs of shoes still in the boxes. If we're musicians or entertainers, if it's free, we're there.
That's right,
okay?
Right, yeah. In radio, if it's a listener food, it tastes great.
Exactly. Perfect.
But you're right. Golf is a drug, and people who don't play don't understand it. Oh, yeah. But once you get bitten, I'm telling you, it doesn't let go, and it's something you can do forever, and you have friends forever, no matter where in the world you go. Is there anybody, Gary, that you've always wanted to share the stage with? Because it sounds like you've really been with everyone. Is there anybody because you with Frank Sinatra and all these different places, anybody that kind of eluded you?
It's funny that you brought up that name, because I'm going to tell you something. I'm the only person in this business that ever worked with Frank Sinatra and Willie Nelson in the same night.
Wow!
I got a call from Frankie Randall, who was running the entertainment division for Steve Wynn at the Golden Nugget. Steve Wynn and Frankie Randall called me at 3 a.m. in the morning, which naturally I was up back in those days, in I think it was probably 1980, and said, we're opening the Crystal Ballroom with the Golden Nugget, and Frank Sinatra is going to open with the orchestra, do 35 to 40 minutes. We're going to close the curtain and strike the orchestra and set up Willie's band. He's going to do 2 hours. We're putting you on in the middle. So Frank would do his 40 minutes. They'd close the curtain. I'd go out in front of the curtain, and for 30 minutes, while they struck the orchestra and set up Willie's band, I would entertain. Then I would walk off. They'd open up, and Willie'd do 2.5 hours. I mean, so I pretty much worked with everyone from Frank Sinatra to Willie Nelson. I mean, I know that my wife Nita and I have sat down and we've talked and tried to find through contracts and everything how many country, rock, pop, and pop icons I've worked with, and it's over 100.
Wow.
Over 100 of people I will name. If I said the name, you would know the person. I mean, literally, I've worked that many over the years. There's so many, it boggles my mind to think about it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not out with Mickey Gilley or if it's the Beach Boys or the Doobie Brothers or whatever. I mean, all these different people, even Ray Price. I mean, you know, all of the country and rock icons. I've played with them over the years.
And
yeah,
you work with
Pretty
them
amazing.
at different stages of their career as well.
Definitely different stages. Yes.
You know what's amazing as we hear you talk, there's such a humble tone in your approach, in your memories, in your appreciation, and you talk about working with these icons. I'd venture to say that every one of them feels the same way about you.
Well,
and you're an icon in their eyes.
I certainly hope so. The theme of this documentary they're doing is Gary Mule Deer, a life in 4-letter words. I don't do 4-letter words in my show, but my name is 3 4-letter words, Gary Mule Deer. My wife's name is Nita, Nita is a 4-letter word. I traded Coke for golf, 2 4-letter words. My comedy influence was Jack Benny, Jack. My musical influence was Cash, Johnny, Cash. All of this stuff, 4-letter words from me being. I play, I sing, I joke, I do a show, whatever it is. All these 4-letter words, it's all kind of my life, and we go through all this, and it's amazing to me when I think about, you know, anyway. It's kind of the theme of the whole thing. What I'm trying to say is that I'm so blessed to still be around and still doing what I'm doing. And have these people, you know, come up, they interview different people. And I'm shocked at how many people I actually influenced back in the comedy days, although they did not end up being prop comedians. They all come up to me and say, you're the guy that you were. Here's what it was, Sonny. They came up to me, and a lot of guys would be, I don't know, they wouldn't like to hear this, but I love it when they say, Gary Mule Deer, you were always my favorite comedian. I forgot all about you. and I say, well, that's understandable, because when you saw me, I really wasn't there. I'd probably been up about 3 or 4 days and was just struggling just to try to look normal.
Yeah.
I mean, so I honestly believe that. When I look at an old tape of mine, like I'm sitting with David Letterman on the other show before the late night with David Letterman.
Right.
This is, you know, before, and I can remember how many days I'd been up. Or I look at Don Kirshner's rock concert and say, oh, my God, I remember I didn't go to bed the night before. Or Make Me Laugh. My God, I stayed up for 3 of the 5 days when we did shows. I mean, literally, I can remember that stuff. And I got by. I'm not saying I would have. I think I would have even been a little better then. I would have been, you know, the drug hadn't turned on me yet.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
when it started to, I really noticed it, and it got my attention, and I almost, you know, the guys that didn't quit are all gone now. You know, the guys. You know, they're gone.
Yes.
I'm so lucky to be here because of that. You know,
You are.
It's quite a ride, and I'm still going.
Oh, my
Can't believe
goodness.
it.
Well, you know, you got people like George Burns, and you look at Tony
Yeah.
Bennett. You know, he comes to San Antonio every year. He's in his 90s. You still got a long way to go.
That's what I'm hoping. I know. Johnny Mathis.
Yeah.
Johnny Mathis was 84 this year. He's singing the best I've ever heard him. I've been with him 26 years. And here's another thing too. I'm playing in the Crosby Golf Tournament out in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And the night before, a bunch of us did the show. There was Bob Hope, there was Gerald Ford, there was Glenn Campbell, there was Pat Boone, there was Vince Gill, myself, Johnny Mathis. The next day on the driving range, Johnny Mathis says to me, the lady that's been with me 21 years is retiring. Would you like the job? I said, yes. He said, you'll go on in the middle. And he turned around and started hitting golf balls again. And so for 26 years now, Johnny opens the show, does 35 minutes. I come out and do 25. He comes back and does an hour. What better job can you get than having Johnny Mathis open and close the show for you, right?
Right. Wow.
But literally, it's a dream, and I get to play for audiences that still know how to be an audience. They dress up, they're attentive, they read. That's what I love about working with. That's what I love about being on the Opry. This thing being on the Opry 4 to 5 to 6 times a month, Sonny, is a dream come true for me. To be a part of the Grand Ole Opry now, it's just I'm not a member, but I'm a regular, and I'm on it as much as I can work out on my schedule. It's fantastic. It's wonderful.
Unbelievable. Well, I have to tell you, Gary, I am so thrilled that we were able to reconnect and that you remembered not only those days, but gave us such an insight to what it was like. I tell people about that, and it's like, you mean, what are you talking about? It was just magical, and it continues to be, and it's really what you make of it. And if Johnny Mathis is singing, chances are you're singing the comedy echoes of not only the past, the present, the future, but mostly Mule Deer at his absolute best, because that's where you are now.
And you know what, Sonny? You've got to say the same thing for yourself. Look how long we've been doing this.
Absolutely.
You think about it. You're one of them too. You're in this group, and we're happy to be here. We love what we're doing, and we're so grateful.
Oh yeah.
That's as good as it gets for me anymore.
It really is.
I don't need any more of that.
It really is. Well, please give Johnny my best. Johnny and we worked together at KMPC. We would always do this big show of the world at the Forum with 20,000 people, and he'd be one of the headliners. And in fact, he and I were both in on the float during the Hollywood Parade.
My God!
All the other
I still remember.
Yeah,
I'll tell him. Great. Yeah,
please do. Do. Mule Deer,
great.
God bless you. Thank you so much again for your time and continued success. And I hope to see you in person real soon.
I hope so too, man. Thanks. Love it.
Well, didn't I tell you? That was some ride. The one, the only Gary Mule Deer. After all these years, I've got a link to Gary's website, his tour dates, Twitter page. Everything, you're going to find it at sunnyradio.com/show. That's sunnyradio.com/show. And while you're there, subscribe to my podcast. You'll hear the long version of all of these shows that you hear on the radio, and you'll get even more inspiration. Special thanks to our sponsor, Ideal Precision Roofing. If you've got hail damage or suspect even wind damage, especially in the San Antonio area, go to idealprecisionroofing.com for a free inspection or give them a call, 210-485-1553. Until next time, I'm Sonny Melendrez, and I encourage you to go out and find the music and the comedy in your life. Bye-bye.